They say that saving is the most important thing you can do in order to start your journey of becoming financially successful. The number one thing to get you started on this journey. However, why on earth is saving so boring? So boring. So incredibly boring.
Let's go for a drive, shall we?
Now, if you're thinking to yourself, that was one of the most obnoxious video openings of my entire life that I've ever seen, I'm gonna wholeheartedly agree with you. It was so annoying. I felt like such an ass. I suppose I wanted to illustrate the fact that most people really don't know how to save, first and foremost. The amount of comments I get from all of you guys, legitimately, here is the evidence that I actually get all these questions about savings. And the amount of people that think that is boring as so many people think that if you sacrifice these short-term pleasures, you're not really living, and therefore you'll always be a tight ass and you won't be able to buy anything fun and exciting for yourself. I bought a house and this car outright because I felt like it. No debt. Because I sacrificed a few things in my youth in order so I could prioritize saving. And this is the benefit of learning to save. So let's talk about saving and how to finally rewire it for yourself so it is not boring as and you actually enjoy it and you actually do it. You might think that you are a free-thinking human and that you always act rationally and intentionally. However, this might not actually be the case. There are two main reasons, roughly, that we do anything at all, and these I'm going to call our primary motivators. The first primary motivator is pain. So essentially getting yourself away from pain, aka doing something is going to become less painful than not doing that thing. Let's say that you were overweight in high school and you got picked on and it was horrible and it was one of the worst times of your life. Potentially you could have in your adult life become a gym junkie because it was one of the most painful things for you and you didn't want to experience that again in your adult life. So not exercising and not being as fit as possible might mean that you could fall back into the trap of what happened to you as a kid when you were being bullied. Pain, or the memory of pain, is driving you to do something. Now, there is a second primary motivator, and this is pleasure, aka doing something is more pleasurable than not doing it at all. For example, you want to go see your friends on the weekend because it's far more pleasurable to do that rather than sit at home and be bored by yourself. Or you eat that ice cream because it is far more pleasurable than not eating that ice cream. Both primary motivators are very, very different. One is tied to pleasure, one is tied to pain, but they both have something in common, and that is that both of them have a very strong emotional attachment component to them. Now, let's tie it back to money. Why is it that most people kind of suck at saving money? It's probably because of the second primary motivator, which is pleasure. Because the act of saving is not as pleasurable as saving it. It is delayed gratification. You look at your bank account and you see these numbers and you know what it represents. It's that latest fashion, latest, iPhone or whatever it might be that you really need to get your hands on because consumerism tells you that it makes you a better person if you have this, and you should just be living life. Like, money's there to be spent and live your life, right? Saving, thinking about your future, thinking about retirement or investing is just such a drag. It's not fun because it's delayed gratification. You can always start that tomorrow, right? But today you should be living, especially multiply that with all your friends also buying the latest and greatest and no one really focusing on saving in society, and you therefore feel extra pressure to be like them because you are are the reflection of your environment. If no one prioritizes saving in your world, which is likely the case because in society these days most people are very, very, very bad financially, it is a bit of a disaster combination. So if this is the reason why you're not saving, the pursuit of pleasure, what could be the solution to this? Here's the interesting thing. Biologists actually say that we are creatures that live in the moment. This has helped us to survive history. So for example, when we were hunter-gatherers and we came across some food, we would eat as much as we possibly could because we never knew when the next meal was going to come. And this helped us to survive back then, but now it's just making all of us sick. And this is also the reason why so many of us find it quite hard to rationally think about our future and prepare for the future, and we always want to have instant gratification instead. But thankfully, there is some good news and you can actually override this. So according to Dr. Brad Colons, who is a financial psychologist, yes, this is an actual job title and I love it, we're 73 times more likely to actually save money when we're emotionally invested in the act of saving money. So basically, you just have to get more attached to the act of saving rather than the act of spending, which is of course easier said than done. But first of all, this is what has worked for me. It's a long list of things that I've identified that have helped me to become much more emotionally attached to saving. For example, our household when we were young wasn't the nicest place when it came to finances. There were definitely fights around this. So that made me realize how much pain there was associated with not taking care of your finances for the future adult me. That meant that I could have potentially gone down that route of having so many fights about finances with the person I loved and then impacted the children that I might have in the future. And I really didn't like that. So that was a really big identifier. The second thing is I actually was a competitive swimmer. I wanted to go to the Olympics, and there is no such thing as instant gratification within sports. You have to work so hard for moments of instant gratification when you're racing. So I always knew that it was preparation, preparation, preparation until I became qualified enough, skilled enough in order to execute on all of the practice that I did. So I don't know if this could be a sport for you or learning an instrument, but learning the act of delayed gratification in some way, shape or form, and then feeling what it feels like when you finally execute on the skill set that you have acquired over practice of years or months. Hone in on that feeling of how great it feels and how proud you are of yourself when you delay gratification. The other thing, for sure, I am a natural born rebel. I've always been a rebel in society, and I've noticed how crooked it is that people are struggling their entire lives, then being told that it's taboo to even think about money and saving money because it makes you selfish and greedy and all that jazz. And yet people struggle and fight about it, and they really, really want to have money, so they pretend like they have money. And I was like, why are you pretending? So I think authenticity is a big part of it. It's like, I don't have the money now. That's what I was thinking to myself, but I know I'm going to have the money later, and I'd rather be authentic and actually live my truth, which means I actually have to do the work in order to get myself to become successful in the long run. So it is a huge degree of personal responsibility. I could point the finger at so many things that, were stopping me from making money or acquiring wealth. I could have found so many excuses, and I gotta tell you, sometimes it's a lot easier to find those excuses. And I know people have different starting points when it comes to finances. Some start off on a horrible note, horrific note, and it's so hard to dig yourself out of that. But it's a small, tiny little chipping away every single day, learning an extra skill, an extra little bit of information that's going to get you out of that deep hole of financial burden. Because a small, tiny sacrifice today could mean that you reward yourself in the future, that you can honestly buy yourself all the toys in the freaking world. And that's the other thing. Definitely, for sure, have yourself a vision book and little goals that you're working towards. Because if you say, I want to be a millionaire by the age of 25 or 40 or whatever, that is a bit overwhelming. So you want to break these steps down a little bit more. So in the next couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be releasing a video about vision books and how to have specific actionable goals with a set date that you're working towards that are manageable so that you also feel what it feels like to have those goals come true for you, those mini tiny micro goals that eventually add up to be huge successes. For those that are doing pretty well with their savings, can you give down in the comments a reason, a way that you started prioritizing saving over spending and what worked for you? Because I'm one person, I only have my own insights, but there are so many of us amazing humans already doing so well with saving. So inspire the people that are struggling with your own story, getting yourself out of like really crappy situation into an amazing situation. So please share that down below. People will be reading and it's going to inspire them greatly, and it could change their lives. I think I have to go home because I'm really cold. I'm not really sure why, because I'm totally dressed appropriately. Okay, let's go. If you're enjoying this content and you are grateful that I'm sacrificing my warmth for your entertainment, consider liking and subscribing. The simple like helps us to get the message of finance and freedom out to the world, which we believe is a human right. Also, if you love reading short stories that are going to teach you so much about this whole finance and freedom world, we have an amazing newsletter that people really love. There's a link in the bio to find out more. And finally, you can get 20% off our membership by using the code YouTube at checkout. And this membership is epic, private membership, more than 2,500 community members in there, all interested in this topic of finance and freedom. Great place for you to elevate yourself within this skill set area. More info can be found in the link in the bio. And I'm just gonna take a moment to warm up again. We've already spoken about the fact that people find it much easier to spend money whenever it is on a card, or even more so whenever you're using your phone to pay for anything. It doesn't feel like cash, so you're not emotionally invested in that. And so the same thing happens when you're saving. You see numbers in a bank account and it's not very exciting sometimes. Therefore, having a small physical representation of savings that you look at every single day is a way to inspire you to continue down this journey. And so you can do this through the use of precious metals. It is one of the most beautiful things whenever you're holding a chunk of precious metals within your hands. Now, this isn't worth a huge amount of money, but it shows me that I'm an investor, and it shows me that I prioritize finances and saving, and I have this visible with myself at all times. I bought this when I didn't have a lot of money, and it pushed me to keep going because I wanted to know that my money could buy more of this. Now, we've only been using fiat currency for a very short period of time when it comes to the timeline of humanity. Before that, we were using precious metals, so these retain their value a lot. Historically, precious metals have also been shown to retain their value even amongst inflation. So it's a nice way to just store a little bit of wealth for yourself. Now, if you're a beginner saver, I wouldn't recommend saving and putting all your money into precious metals, but having a tiny little bit just to remind you of why you're doing this, that this is your future retirement. But make sure you store it in a very safe place, whether it's a safe in your house or some sort of vault around the world. There'll be some links down below to show you some services that we use personally in order to keep our precious metals safe. How else can you make saving not boring? Well, let's talk about brushing your teeth. So I think you brush your teeth because it's a habit. You don't really have an emotional connection to it. It just happens. It's not negative, it's not positive, it's just something that you know you need to do. So with saving itself, you can take it out of the negative or positive category and just make it an automatic habit. So think about ways of setting up your budgets for yourself, for sure, and paying yourself first. I've mentioned this a million times before. 10% of all money you earn is yours to keep, so ensure that you put that into a savings account straight away, and then also have automatic withdrawals from your bank accounts to pay for your bills and then put them into savings. So it becomes a habit that doesn't have any emotions attached to it and just becomes part of your daily routine. It's like you get paid, money goes out, you don't have any emotional attachment. The only thing you're gonna have to do is relearn to live with a little bit less cash because you're prioritizing savings first. But the act itself of saving, it becomes a bit of a neutral activity and just a habit. And through great, very small, repetitive habits, you get great results, like keeping your teeth. The stories we tell ourselves as human beings shape everything about us. They shape how we are programmed to react to things, our values, and they also shape the actions we take on a daily basis. They shape how we interact with the world around us and the things we choose to focus on. Inherently, stories have emotion, they have power, and they allow us to get emotionally invested in people, events, and fantasies that we haven't personally experienced. And we can use this emotion and energy to write the future we want for ourselves. You yourself have the power in your mind to rewrite your future story. Whatever your situation is right now, you have the power to look into the future and tell yourself what you want that future to look like. Say the story that you have for yourself right now is that you really just hate paying rent every single month. Well, you could rewrite the story and imagine yourself and visualize yourself and work towards the pleasure of owning your own house, which comes through learning to save for a house deposit. If the current story is that you don't like your job, why don't you try to rewrite that story and think, hey, if I learn to save, it could be enough for me to take some time off so I can focus on the side business that I've always wanted to do, or the money that I save is enough capital for me to kickstart the business that I've always dreamt of so I can finally be my own boss. The story begins with your mind. If you think about the future and you dread the societal expectation and the story that we all have to work until we're 65 in a crappy system that doesn't give us any time off and hardly have any vacations or holidays at all, rewrite the story and tell yourself that the act of saving is going to free you from this system, meaning that you can retire earlier, or sacrificing that impulse to buy that latest and greatest thing in order to save enough money to take a year off so you can be retired for a year when you're 30 or 35. Use the emotion and energy behind the different versions of the life that you want to create and really seek that delayed gratification in order to have that dream life of yours that you visualize constantly for yourself. The stories we tell ourselves as humans create us. They make us. We are creatures that are obsessed with stories. So use these brand new stories that you create for yourself as fuel to keep you pushing forward. Hey, maybe your financial situation is pretty dreadful right now and you don't really know how you're gonna get out of it. But just the act of visualizing a different version of yourself living a prosperous life might just make you feel better. And as a result, it might be telling the universe that you precisely want that kind of a life. So it's going to put opportunities in front of you to make this story come true. But here is the interesting part. It's whether or not you're going to take action on this new story that's going to determine if it's going to come true. You can do this. I believe in you. Savings in general has a very bad rap, and I think it's because of the rise of consumerism and also the rise of celebrating people being in debt, which benefits the giant corporations instead of benefiting you and ensuring that you have a secure financial future for yourself and a much less stressful life. I will be transparent and say when I was still building up my wealth, when I didn't have much, I definitely did spend more money on things such as health and education because I knew that those two things would help me in order to become wealthy. But this video particularly is talking to those people that are trapped in the consumer race and trying to keep up with the Joneses. Things will never bring you happiness, and I can absolutely be the proof of that. Like, I am able to buy as many things as I want and it doesn't make me happier. But I know you'll probably need to experience this for yourself. When you have more wealth, you'll start buying things and you'll realize it's actually a little bit empty, and it's more the act of building up your wealth that is the exciting part. And that's the big thing between people that want to become rich for the sake of buying things versus those that want to prioritize financial freedom and success for themselves. It's not in order to buy more things. It's the act of being a saver, investor, and financially savvy person. That's the exciting part. Buying things like my car, which by the way is the very first car I've ever bought in my entire life. I'm 32 years old. I have almost 8 properties, investment properties behind me. I have other investments in crypto and precious metals. That was one of the hardest purchases I've ever made because it's a toy and it's not there to serve me to increase my wealth. It's just a toy that depreciates in value. And so I really struggled in order to reward myself in this way, to spend that much money on something that that could have been a house deposit. I could have had a house deposit versus having that car. But I also am on probably the more opposite spectrum, where saving is so important for me and growing my wealth that sometimes I have to snap myself out of it in order to reward myself with toys. So it's a balance I'm learning, but I prefer this balance, being a little bit of a tight ass and being called a tight ass through my youth. I prefer this rather than being broke and struggling. So really, sometimes going to the polar extreme and being very careful about your finances and not buying in to the consumer lifestyle is really wise, in my humble opinion. Not financial advice, just an insight that I've learned over my time. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.